the Spot Track Podcast, talking sports contracts, the salary cap, and business of sports.
Today's edition of the Spot Track Podcast is presented by Authentic Audio Productions. Elevate your podcast. Take it all to the next level. Custom content creation, show hosting, professional services, and tools. It's a one-stop shop for everything your podcast needs today. Visit AuthenticAudioPro.com. My name is Mike Ginnitti. It is Monday, November 18th, week 11? Week 11 of the NFL is nearly in the books. It was a damn good one, especially if you're sitting where I'm sitting in proximity to the Buffalo Bills Stadium. Lots of storylines to get to, including a few teams that have officially flipped the switch of the offseason. Let's put it that way. We'll have a Daniel Jones conversation here. I will tease some Aaron Rodgers stuff in accordance with an article that posted this morning on Spot Track, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And then Dan Soemann is going to join to talk some fun baseball. Not the mundane November free agency season so much, but some storylines that have hit, some awards, an offer, and maybe one or two team things as well. All right, let's get to it. The Bills are now slight AFC favorites, having taken down the Chiefs and knocking out their undefeated season. Probably a positive step for everybody, but we've got a legitimate number one seed race, which is more than you can ask for. Certainly not anything the NFC is offering us at this point in time, because the Lions, the actual Super Bowl favorites, for the first time in franchise history, by the way, the Super Bowl favorite Detroit Lions are running away with it. The Eagles are keeping up a little bit. The 49ers are not. The Packers are not. There's a bit of a mess in the middle of this NFC, but the Lions look amazing. They are overcoming shortcomings. They are gelling together. It's one of the most explosive offenses we've had in years. I don't have stats to put that on. I'm just telling you what the eye test says and just how well Jared Goff is spreading this ball around. MVP-wise, it's got to be Josh Allen, Jared Goff, Lamar Jackson, probably some order of that. Again, I'm not sitting here on DraftKings to give you those kind of numbers, but that's just what the eye test is certainly saying, and obviously what the success rate is saying as well. None of those players are in the conversations we're going to have today, which is quarterbacks sort of going backwards. Some of them have already officially gone backwards. Some are clearly on their way. And of course, we've got a bunch in the middle. There are a few articles now with relevancy live on Spot Track that I want to tease here. I did basically a mid-season quarterback update. I like to do this every couple of weeks. Just where the hell are we with 32 quarterbacks? The starting quarterbacks, maybe a couple of QB2s, QB1Bs, let's put it that way. What's their contracts say? Pending free agency, market values, whatever's relevant to their current situation, release, retirement, trade value. I've got it in there. I've got a little blurb for each of these 32 starting quarterbacks. That's piece number one. And then just this morning, before I came on here, the start of the 2025 roster bubble piece with the quarterbacks. So I have, I know it's more than 12. I bet you it's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. 14 NFL quarterbacks, some of them starters, some of them backups, some of them on rookie contracts, some of them on the biggest, worst contract in the history of football. That is now live. And again, it's going to be a long-running series that we do every year. This is our annual tradition. I generally start it right around this Thanksgiving period, and I'll continue to update it as new reports come in, as new developments come in, as teams figure out exactly what they are right now and what that might mean for them in 2025. But this is a larger quarterback list than I'm used to having. Let's put it that way. Generally, it's a couple of quarterbacks, and then I have to spend a couple hours on the offensive weapons, some of the linemen, certainly the secondary pieces that are kind of revolving doors now to some degree. But there's some names here. There's some names that, a couple that really don't belong here, I think, with any kind of substance. But if the contract is telling me one thing, even if the performance on the field is holding up its end of the bargain, teams are willing to make big decisions. All right. Russell Wilson was a good enough starting quarterback to be the Broncos quarterback in 2025. But that's not what this was about, right? There were other factors in play. Obviously, a disconnect between the coach, a disconnect between the team, it sounded like, with Russell Wilson. But also, they were in position to draft a quarterback, and they did just that. So moving on from Wilson was a layered process. And again, not necessarily, maybe not even majority because of his overall performance. There's a couple of guys on this list, and I'm not going to give it away because I'm excited for you guys to provide some feedback on this. There's a couple of names on this list that are current starting quarterbacks that I think even PFE loves, right? They're well graded. They're winning some ball games. One of them might even win the freaking division. I'll give you that one. And even still, there may be a conversation to be had about an outright release, maybe a retirement, possibly a trade. I think everything's on the table with some of these names. So financial ramifications, dead cap information, 14 quarterbacks, many of them notable, a few of them rookie quarterbacks who could be traded. And we'll see. It's not going to be the biggest quarterback carousel offseason we have in 2025, but one or two of these names that I'm teasing here kind of go, and you never know, right? Because it could be a bit of a dominoes effect if Anthony Richardson is actually traded out of Indianapolis. What does that mean draft-wise, free agent-wise, etc.? So, again, we'll see. 14 names, more than I think I've ever posted at this position, certainly out of the gate. And like I said, they, generally speaking, within the next month or 2 months, I'm adding to these lists, not subtracting. So we'll see what happens. But that's the official launch of the roster bubble piece now on Spot Track. And we'll continue to go position by position, probably about 2 positions a week heading towards the Christmas season. And then we'll obviously be in full boat at that point in time. All right. Speaking of bubbles, one has already officially come to head. Daniel Jones officially benched. No surprise there. You probably already know the numbers by heart, especially if you follow this team. Significant cap savings coming for the Giants, which is obviously part of the plan. You bench him now, not just for football reasons, but also to preserve that $23 million injury guarantee that he has on his 2025 salary. And if you think that the plan is to not replace him immediately through the draft, all you need to know is that he is being replaced by Tommy DeVito, not Drew Lock. Okay. So they're going from QB1 to QB3 in New York. It's not an accident. There's a couple of factors in play, but just understand that, you know, if the plan is to keep GM, head coach, most of the coaching staff intact, these people are going to be scouring the draft. Right now, they're number 5 overall. There's a very good chance they can get into the top 3. And at that point in time, you're talking Shadur Sanders, you're talking Cam Ward, easily the 2 best options at the top of this draft from a quarterback perspective. And, you know, I think both of those pieces aligned with Brian Daboll, who did have success with Josh Allen, could be interesting. And it could be a quick fix if the rest of the roster is allocated properly. And, you know, freeing up the $19 million of cap space for Daniel Jones is a hell of a good start in that process. They do have some defensive pieces. They made the big Brian Burns trade this offseason. They have Andrew Thomas under contract, though he's oft injured as a blindside left tackle. But they're going to try to slap this thing together on the fly with a brand new rookie quarterback. There's no doubt in my mind. They want to lose as many games as possible over the next 7 weeks. Tommy DeVito should help based on what we've seen of late from him. And there's just not the weapons that they need. That's just, it's an incomplete team, and they weren't getting complete quarterback play as well. So Daniel Jones will certainly be released before any of his 2025 cash vests, and he will walk away. $108 million earned from the New York Giants for 70 starts, 70 games. That's 35th all time in terms of quarterbacks in the history of football. He's just behind Andrew Luck. And when you put it in that perspective, that's wild stuff, right? I mean, Daniel Jones never had that kind of pedigree, but he was the number 6 overall pick. All right. They did go and aggressively try to get this guy from Duke and make him their franchise quarterback. And I'll give the Giants credit in this regard. Should they have ever signed this contract? No. Who are they bidding against that it had to be $40 million a year? Nobody. Maybe Washington, but nobody. They gave this guy every possibility, every opportunity. They restructured the coaching staff. They brought in a A-plus weapon this year in Neighbors. Now they danced around the Saquon Barkley situation. You can say that the balance of the offense went away, and it really didn't give Jones as much of an effort as he probably needed this year to be successful. But I think there were way too many deficiencies in his game to even try to make excuses, and that's just fine. This happens. But I think kudos to the Giants for at least running this course. My guess is the majority of people out there, the analysts and whatnot, will say that this was just a complete waste of $100 million. If you want to go all the way back, a complete waste of a number 6 overall pick, fine. All right, I get it. It really has never percolated. But here we are. And there won't be a situation where he'll probably be a starting quarterback in this league ever again. There's just too many options. I've just teased you the roster bubble list. There's going to be options for teams that need a quarterback. And Daniel Jones may be brought in to compete on some sort of, $4 to $5 million incentive-laden contract. And that's fine. But because of the rope and the leash that the Giants gave him, you're not going to see teams stick their neck out and try to make this guy their QB1 out of the gate. He's going to have to work back and earn it. It's going to be a Geno Smith type situation. But, he's got $108 million. He seems to be rather healthy now, which is good. And what else can you ask for out of a professional athlete? Certainly not anything that he did wrong, just not that guy, and won't be the guy now going forward. So roster bubble number 1 has officially been checkmarked. That will be Daniel Jones. Again, $19 million and change saved in terms of the cap. He won't see the next 2 years of his contract, and he'll be looking for some sort of competition role starting March 12th. Why not Drew Lock? I know that's the hot topic. I threw some gasoline on that fire on Twitter this morning, just because there is a small portion of that conversation that's this contractual. All right. And I have talked about this before, right? There's the waiting game with playing Daniel Jones through week 10 or even week 11 here has to do with the incentive package for Drew Lock. And you can say that I'm bashing on the front office of the Giants, and you can say that the Giants are being cheap with the information I'm about to tell you. And fine, you're allowed your opinion. But I'm going to stand on the same hill that I stood on, 6 weeks ago when we started having this baseball conversation, when teams were cutting players at the end of the year before they hit incentives. And I had to come on here and tell you that you can read that headline and you can read that post and just immediately hey, that's an honorable statement. But unless you've been sitting behind this computer, right, and wearing these goggles for the past 18 years like I have, I'm just here to tell you this stuff happens constantly. And we get wrapped up in numbers, and we get wrapped up in commas and extra zeros and, these gaudy payouts, so that when we get to a point where I post the incentive package for Drew Lock, and you're looking at 75% of these things, this list, and saying, well, he's never going to come close to, 15 touchdown passes or a playoff berth. This is all BS. The only thing he could possibly hit is 40% of the playing time or 50% of the playing time, which would be like $500,000. Why would the Giants care about that? Because it's $500,000. Okay. We can't lose sight of how much effing money that is. And you can say, it's couch change to billionaires, and Daniel Jones made $100 million. You can't give Drew Lock $500,000 to be a good quarterback soldier for 7 weeks. No, because you don't have to. Okay, you don't have to. There's no mandate. There's no written law. There's not even an unwritten law. Okay, Drew Lock is Drew Lock, and by the way, he's got a way better chance of going out there and winning ball games than Tommy DeVito does. So when 1 + 1 = 2, Tommy DeVito is your starting quarterback for 7 weeks. It's just how it works. But you can't gloss over the fact that they would only owe him $250,000 for 40% snaps, so it shouldn't matter. He should just get the job. No. This is why agents have to tread lightly with putting this crap in. Because if it's between a guy who's got incentives and a guy who doesn't have incentives, and the season is lost, and everything about right now is just preservation and preparation for an expensive offseason to try to fix your problems, not paying Drew Lock $250,000 is a really good place to start. So don't get caught up in the fact that that's chump change to these guys versus, Josh Allen making $60 million this year. It's something. All right. And it's something. And we see guys get cut before workout bonuses vest. We see guys get cut before guarantees kick in, even though that might save them $40,000 for a couple of weeks that they can cut these players. They're going to do it because the control is there, the savings are there, and those savings add up when you're talking about 70 guys over the course of a regular season. So just don't get wrapped up. Is Drew Lock not starting because of a $250,000 incentive exclusively? No, but it's part of the decision. It's in there. It's a factor. Is it 10%? Maybe. It's a factor. A, he's a better quarterback than Tommy DeVito, and they don't want better right now. They want worse. And B, he's a more expensive quarterback with the ability to become even more expensive with incentives. So I don't mean to go on my soapbox here, but I'm not posting stuff like that to be an asshole. And I'm not posting stuff like that to make Joe Schoen look like an asshole. It's just business. And by the way, it's probably not even Joe Schoen's decision. That probably came from the top down when the collective decision to bench Daniel Jones was in place. Okay, coaching staff decided we're doing this. They may need to get sign off from the front office, from the owner, because it's the most important position in sports. And at that point in time, these kind of discussions start happening. The roundtable discussion of, well, we're looking at draft picks now. What's going to give us the best chance? And also, look at this laundry list of incentives. It's just part of the conversation. Okay, I'm not doing this because this is my business. I'm doing this because it's on our site. It's available information, and it's important. And it's definitely important right now. So don't gloss over the fact that a little bit of money could be a factor in a guy not playing football. It's a factor. All right. And it's something everybody has to deal with, especially teams that are heavy incentive based, which you can start to look and see which teams those are. All right. That's enough ranting and raving. I'm going to tease some of the bubble stuff here quickly, like I mentioned. The Aaron Rodgers stuff is getting ugly, and it's unfortunate because you could take the humanity side out of it and the personal side of Aaron Rodgers out of this, and just put him on the pedestal that he deserves from a football standpoint. This guy was an all-timer early. Okay, I mean, he made the Brett Favre era in Green Bay go away extremely quickly. Extremely quickly. That's not a small thing. And he held up his end of the bargain really right to the bitter end in Green Bay with the back-to-back MVPs, playing through the collarbone stuff. Just, he's done everything on the football field that any player has ever been asked and more. And he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer for it. So to see him struggling like this, or not even being able to somewhat elevate this team to even 500 status, let alone playoff contention status, is tough. It's devastating. You hate to see players like this have this type of ending. And I'm just worried that he's going to have irrational confidence, like he's still saying, right? That 2025 is still in play for him. And if that's the case, I just don't know that the Jets can take that on, right? If retirement is not on the table, it's my opinion that the Jets will have to release Aaron Rodgers. It won't be financially speaking to their detriment, but that's a tough thing to do because you're admitting a hell of a lot of things went wrong, which is all the things you gave up to acquire Aaron Rodgers, the money you paid out to Aaron Rodgers, the money you paid out to Alan Lazard and Randall Cobb, all the pieces that came with him, what you gave up for Devontae Adams, the money you paid Devontae Adams, and then, of course, the fact that you're a backwards sliding team with expensive pieces, a coaching situation that's certainly in disarray, et cetera, et cetera. Is Aaron Rodgers really not good enough to be their starting quarterback in 2025? I don't know. All right. I'm not numbers all 22 guy, but I know enough. All right. And he's kind of the same player he was to finish his tenure in Green Bay. All right. Right around 64% completion, right around 220 yards per game. The passer rating's right around 90. It's just what he was. It's what he's been for 2+ seasons now. If you take all of 2023 away, of course. So that was it. I mean, that's it. 37-year-old Aaron Rodgers was kind of the last ride. Can the Jets build a playoff contention team with this version of Aaron Rodgers? Well, it certainly isn't right now. And there's a bunch of factors in play. But if he wants to come back, are the Jets willing to say no? And then where do they go from there? And the reason I wanted to talk about this a little bit is, there's 13 other players on this roster bubble list in terms of quarterbacks. I don't think any of them are an immediate Band-Aid fix for this team. And we've already discussed that arguably the best free agent quarterback, Sam Darnold, probably wants nothing to do with this organization. Now, if the price is right, but probably wants nothing to do with this organization. So that's tough. So I don't know that there's a Band-Aid fix for this. Now, is this a team that, throws something at Anthony Richardson or throws something at Bryce Young as try to quickly fix a somewhat established rookie versus just going out and drafting your own? The Jets currently have the number 7 pick, but Giants in front of them, Vegas in front of them, Cleveland in front of them, Tennessee in front of them, probably all quarterback contenders for this upcoming draft. So right now, they're not in position to get one of these two guys, and they'd be thinking about one of the third or fourth guys. They did draft Jordan Travis, the kid out of Florida State, back when Florida State could actually play football. He spent the whole year rehabbing a nasty injury, as we saw in the bowl game. We'll see if that 5th round pick, right, which is already a bad start, gets us to a point where he's competing for a job. And then the other piece of this is Tyrod Taylor, who, the Jets really haven't even turned to. You haven't heard the name. Many of you didn't even know he was the backup quarterback right now for the Jets and Aaron Rodgers. He signed a 2-year contract, 2 for $12, 8.5 guaranteed, and $2.5 million of that 8.5 is next year's salary. Okay. Now they could buy him out. They could trade him on that salary and have somebody restructure it, or they could keep him. And 36-year-old or 35.5-year-old Tyrod Taylor might be, and I say this with all due respect, might be for one season a better veteran option to kind of transition you into whatever the next phase of the Jets is. If they're drafting a 2nd-round quarterback who's a project, if they're trying to ramp up Jordan Travis this offseason and he's just not ready yet, Tyrod Taylor plus some semblance of rookies could be how the 2025 Jets look. Is that better than whatever version of Aaron Rodgers we have right now? 220 yards, 64 completion rate, 90 passer rating. I don't know. We've seen Tyrod Taylor do, 5-6 weeks of very good football play. That's English for you. And then fall off a cliff. Okay. And that's just kind of typical, right? That's Josh Dobbs and Ryan Fitzpatrick and all these notable backups that have had their moment here and there. That's sort of been Tyrod. Now we've seen Tyrod take the Bills through a whole season into the postseason and garner a $50 million extension. Those days were done. He's 36 going on 30. He's 35 going on 36. But for one season at $6 million cash, which is what they have him at, that might be the answer as they spin the reels from the draft perspective and try to figure out or ramp up somebody else with a brand new coach, by the way. So I just want to lay that out there, that there's a very good chance that the Jets just look at Aaron Rodgers and say, we're sorry. We know that this is a disaster for everybody, all parties included, but we're going to have to put you back on the open market. And then it becomes fun. Because if he does want to play, there will be somebody for one season who thinks they can bring him into a better situation and utilize all those stats I just gave you with a balanced running game and blah, blah, blah. So we'll see. We're heading in that direction. My hope is that he just retires and says, all right, I gave it one last effort, tried to rehab from the Achilles. It didn't go as planned. I've got 15 years of legacy before this that certainly stamps who I was as a player. I don't need to worry about how bad things went for the last minute and a half. Tough tough as an all-timer to see it get down to this point. It's going to be tough to see him released. We saw Peyton Manning released out of Indy because of his neck stuff and then go win a Super Bowl. I don't think we're on that path, but it's somewhat similar in that legends getting released and then trying to pick up the pieces somewhere else. I think that's where we're headed in the February, March area. Now, quickly, before I move on to baseball with Dan, the contract says they could wait forever. They don't have to do anything with Aaron Rodgers until week 1 of the 2025 regular season. He's super, super cap friendly. All right. I think it's $23.5 million. Yep. So you could leave it right there. He's got a $2.5 million base salary and then a $35 million option bonus that, like I said, doesn't vest until week 1. So they've got all spring and summer to figure this Aaron Rodgers stuff out and maybe to let him figure some stuff out, because regardless of what his decision is for next year, they're going to acquire a new quarterback. Now they'd want to know if Sam Darnold was available to be their immediate starting quarterback versus Aaron Rodgers coming back. Obviously, those kind of things had to be shaken out earlier. But you float this thing regardless. He retires, you release him. You're floating this thing probably through June 1st because there's $49 million of dead cap. Regardless, whether you trade him, whether you cut him, whether he retires, that's bonus money. That's got to hit. So, maybe the Jets want to take that all next year, but probably you're going to split that up as 14 and 35 after some sort of post-June 1 move, a release, a retirement. I don't think a trade, but maybe a trade. So don't expect this to be a March 12th decision. We might hear some things. Rodgers might drag us through the weeds a little bit because that's sort of his MO, but contractually speaking, whatever happens probably waits until June. And the contract 100% allows for that. So again, it's a top of the list priority stuff in terms of the offseason, what happens with the Jets as a whole and Rodgers as a whole. But there is some time for them to figure this stuff out. By the way, full no trade clause. He's got all the rights. There's a lot of things going his way still. But we'll see how the next couple of weeks goes, and even if they even let him be the starting quarterback for the next couple of weeks, or maybe we'll all learn again that Tyrod Taylor is the backup quarterback for the Jets going forward. Let's talk some baseball here. All right, Dan, get me off my NFL soapbox. Let's talk some fun baseball stuff. I don't think you saw this one coming. I sent you a link to what I wanted to talk about today. It has nothing to do with what the hell are the Angels doing, because they keep signing players that I don't understand, but we'll leave that for a bigger conversation. Paul Skenes, is he the third most important player in baseball right now? Is it Ohtani? Is it Aaron Judge? I guess Soto. He's top 5 though. Is he top 5?
It depends on how you want to measure that, but
marketability, popularity, right?
For sure. He's kind of ejected himself to the forefront of the conversation. That's for sure.
All right. Fair enough. He's got the girlfriend stuff that the other sports are starting to latch onto and promote. And there's a hell of a lot going on here. And oh, by the way, the Pirates are leaning into this thing pretty hard. I'm sure you've seen this by now if you're listening to this and you follow any kind of sports business timeline, but the Pirates have made a unique offer. So before we get into the details, I just want to ask this question. Is this a first for you, Dan, before we get into what this is? Have you ever seen this before?
No, I don't necessarily, I'm not the foremost expert on this or anything, but I certainly haven't seen this for an active / up and coming player, but
right.
I'll let you explain.
Yeah, but you are a memorabilia guy. You're a collector. You had a good run with cards, and you've kind of flipped over to more like bats and balls and things like that. But you're definitely in this spotlight. I think you're on Reddit with this stuff and maybe some quasi Facebook groups and all that stuff. I'm with you to some degree on this level, and I've never seen it to this degree. So here's the deal. There's a 1-of-1 Paul Skenes rookie card out there that has the official MLB debut patch built into it, and then obviously a Paul Skenes official autograph on it. These debut patches are brand new. They actually are worn on a player's first day on the uniform, taken off, and I assume there are many things happening with them, but I did not know it was going this route. I guess I should have assumed, having all these patch cards being out there and these jersey cards being out there. Dan, is this happening with every single rookie card? Is there a patch card for every player, a 1 of 1?
Good question. I don't know that, but I suspect we will see them going forward. Like, I don't know if Topps or whoever owns like the rights to that, or if they had like that. Doesn't this all feel like it was set up to do this exact sort of thing, right? Like, are we just going to start adding pieces to equipment in order to split that off and auction it off for money or whatever? Like, are we going down?
Number one, yes, 100%. That's what it was. And by the way, thank God, baseball, you finally got something right, right? Like, how easy is this? This is such an easy sell. And now the Pirates are involved. So it's becoming a bigger story. And no question that if Topps doesn't own the rights to this stuff, they're going to be paying for big time rookie debut patches because these things can now exist. Here's what exists. There's this 1 of 1 card for Paul Skenes out there. It's in a Topps pack, or going to be in a Topps pack. If you pull that card, the Pirates have made an offer. A loud public offer to the player that gets this card, which is, you can give us this card back for 2 season tickets behind home plate for the next 30 years. You get to meet Paul Skenes. You get 2 Skenes jerseys autographed by him. You get a private 30-person softball game at PNC Park in Pittsburgh, coached by former Pittsburgh Pirates players. I'm going to guess Barry Bonds is not going to be one of them. You get a private tour of the city and of the park. And then more things. And then I believe Paul Skenes' girlfriend, Livy Dunn, chimed in and offered like dinner with them and a night out with them and all sorts of other things coming with it. I'm just floored that this is baseball doing this, right? Because none of the other sports have gone this route. None of the other sports have crossed over into interacting with the memorabilia to this degree, right? I mean, this is the ultimate crossover, and I can't believe that it's baseball doing it, but it's phenomenal. I wish it wasn't Pittsburgh, right? I wish this was a bigger market, because somebody in California is going to pull this card and want nothing to do with Pirates season tickets, and then the whole thing's going to blow up. But it's a pretty damn cool thing. I just want your overall thoughts on it. And do you think this is something that's going to latch on?
Yeah, that you kind of hit it right there. My original hesitation when you said, is he top 5, top 3, whatever player you want to call it? The market size definitely affected my hesitation there a little bit. If this was in New York and LA, something like that, yeah, absolutely, the top would be blown off this. But regardless, yeah, baseball is super unique in terms of all the different equipment they have and like the sort of sex appeal, if you will, to that equipment. Like, I can tell you, like, holding a player's pine tar muddied helmet in your hands is like kind of a pretty cool thing. Or like, touching a bat, that like a cracked bat, and looking, a lot of this stuff now is coming with specific itemized tags too, where you can link it back to specific plays, et cetera, et cetera. But regardless, we're talking about the jersey, which that none of that's really relevant for. But the overall point is there's so much cool stuff that they can do with baseball equipment. You're going to start to see that incorporated into these cards and things like that. Where you can't really, I mean, like a game worn basketball jersey,
nothing.
Like, it just doesn't hit the same.
You want to set Steph Curry's mouth guard? You know what I mean? Like, there's just so little you can do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So baseball sets up perfectly for this. And honestly, they already know what they're doing, because they've sort of milked every ounce of this in terms of like game used balls to this degree. I mean, I know people who collect that stuff, and like in a singular instance, like having a Francisco Lindor game used ball is kind of cool. But like, if it's just like a random Tuesday night, a single or a pitch in dirt, I see people buying pitches in dirt, things like that. Like, if it's something you went to or whatever, like, that's cool. But besides that, I think like they've milked it on like meaningless memorabilia.
They have actual stands inside the stadiums for this stuff now. Yeah,
for sure. And they're literally guys are behind home plate. Like when you see a pitch in dirt and a catcher throw the ball off to the side, that is typically going to an MLB authenticator, not a bat boy. So, and they're documenting that, databasing it, and then that goes into circulation somehow via auction, sale, whatever. So, but I guess I kind of lost the thread to your original point. I have not seen this before. And I think like the crazy part is like, I understand I've been on this podcast numerous times saying this is like a generational type pitching prospect.
Oh yeah.
But he's had like 100+ innings in the major leagues, and he's gonna basically I would assume this is going to set some sort of record, for a card. So
I would think, all right, let's talk about this quickly. The process, I'm going to put you in the driver's seat. You pull this card. All right. I know the auction people have already chimed in. I'm sure you've seen it, right? They're in. They're planting their flag with how this should actually work, and that you should never take this deal, right? Is that how you feel? Are you holding this thing for 7 years, letting him sign his $500 million contract, and just banking on that everything goes as planned, and that this car is going to be worth way more than everything being offered here?
Man, this is really hard in a vacuum because there's so many layers to this, and I guess it depends where you live. If you pull this in Pittsburgh, maybe the season ticket stuff has more value to you. I haven't seen if they're offering some sort of cash incentive, like trade in for that, right? Have you? I mean, do you get what I'm saying? Like if you
I'm gonna go there. I was like, how could we have made this better? Was going to be my next question, right? Like if you're in California and you pull this card and none of this stuff actually matters to you, is there a way that it could have been flexed to be more, universal, more global? Like for instance, your local team is the Dodgers. Instead of the season tickets for the Pirates, you get guaranteed a suite every time Paul Skenes pitches in Dodger Stadium for the rest of your life or something. You know what I mean? Like, how could we have flexed this a little bit? Because it is really, really local. But no, I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking monetarily, right? Like you hand this card in, you're getting couple $1,000, actually tens of thousands of dollars worth of prizes here. What's it going to take for this card to become that valuable? You know what I mean? Like, what's it going to take for the cash value of this offer to become something you could acquire selling this card on eBay in a couple of years? Right.
Like, I could be wrong. I did a quick search here and I can't find what I had read. I think the estimated value on the 30 years of Pirates season tickets behind home plate was like around 2.4 mil, if I'm not mistaken.
What?
Yeah,
the Pirates.
But 30 years to
I know. I'm kidding.
Games, right? No. I originally was kind of like, oh man, that doesn't seem too bad. Like if I had an extra 2.5 mil, that might be one of the first things I spend my money on is my favorite team season tickets behind home plate. But regardless, I mean, I've seen like local card and hobby shop, Dave and Adams. I saw them throw a bounty on this of 10. They'll add 10 grand on their $10 grand in credit to their website if you jump in and get this back to the Pirates. So I guess I just logistically speaking have tons of questions about how this works and or what it is exactly, to the point where this like grabs me more as just a publicity stunt, if you will. But I don't want to just like wash it away like that and not talk about it, because it is a really cool thing, and I think memorabilia, it's super super fun to talk about. So if we're like looking at this from a legitimate thing perspective, I have to assume that's not a hard take it or leave it offer from the Pirates. If somebody in New Mexico pulls this card, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of negotiation. I
have two questions. Number one, this is going to be a very naive question, and I apologize. Why did the Pirates want this card?
That was another question to me, and I have to assume it's to get it. I don't know, to get it back to Skenes, or are they just gonna display it in their in their entrance or something. I don't know, Mike. That was the other thing is like, what are they going to do? Auction it off for charity? And who does it go to? And why is it? I don't really know. So I hate to like I am not poo-pooing this. I just have a ton of questions about like, the second, third, fourth layer of all of this rather than just like, the sit with Libby done in a suite for a game stuff, I mean, it's great. It's all great and super fun. It's just, I guess I don't have the answer to all these questions.
Here's question number 2. Do you think another team will come in?
Yeah. And jump in with the offer.
Yeah. Well, we'll take the card for the same offer.
Yeah.
And now the Twins own Paul Skenes' debut card.
Yeah, I guess like what's the top on this? Let's just back up a half step. I mean, I just did a quick Google search of top sports cards to date sold, and this was from earlier this year.
That's where I'm struggling too. I can't get to that number, Dan.
Yeah, like the tied for 10th is a Honus Wagner card for $3.75 million, right? So we're already talking about a rough value on this card. Like the Pirates are putting a rough value on it in the mid $2 million or plus the experiences on top of that, which like are kind of unquantifiable. So, I mean, like, I don't know. And I am sort of one of these people who thinks the card market has gotten a little bit out of hand in terms of financial value in the last half decade.
COVID really helped. People really refound this thing with COVID.
Yeah. So I just struggle to get there that like, if like whether you win this card as a person and want to hold it as an investment in the future. Like I have trouble seeing like a huge, value to be gained to the point where I would just line up the highest bidder right now, whether that is the Pirates or a different team wanting to negotiate with me, whether that's the auction house just saying, we'll get you the most money. I don't know what the right answer is there, but I
think you're saying the same thing I'm saying.
Personally, I would get out if I was
immediately, right?
Yes.
And here's why. You made your valid points. Paul Skenes, we have no idea what Paul Skenes is going to look like next year. In fact, if there were odds on DraftKings right now, elbow surgery by July would probably be the favorite in the clubhouse, right? Like that's probably where we're headed based on what he's done from a workload standpoint. This is like the most hype a card has ever been in Major League Baseball, right? I mean, like maybe the Griffey Upper Deck, but we don't have this kind of connection to cards with the sport directly. Like this is maximum hype for a card. The second I pulled it, I'd be selling it immediately, because it's good. It can fizzle out by April 1st without struggle. You know what I mean? Like, first of all, this is the Pirates. They could botch this thing in a heartbeat. And his next 6 or 7 years of his career. But also, pitchers are being devalued. Starting pitchers are being devalued. Arm injuries are happening every 2 years. There's so many things that could go wrong that would devalue this card immediately that I would just sell it right out of the gate. Last thing, because I think we agree with that. Last thing. Is there a world in terms of baseball where this debut card becomes the card? Right. So there's all these rookie cards. There's like they're ranked in terms of, obviously, you still want rare. You still want, 1 of 1 or 1 of 10, or that's really what gets you the most bang. But is this debut card going to become a thing? And is this sort of Topps way of forcing that to be the case?
Yeah, I would be surprised if it isn't, because if I had a little more time, I would have reached out to some of my more collector friends, like jersey specific collector friends, because there are so many nuances to this. But I believe they cycle like their jerseys either, I think it's 3 times a year. So it's basically the season is almost split into thirds or quarters, and they get like their like run of jerseys for each of those. So what I'm trying to say here is like, this isn't a debut jersey that is coming out of circulation, but this is a nice, easy way for them to stick a patch on every player who makes their debut and then rip that off after the game and put it into a card or whatever memorabilia thing they wanna, the tchotchke they wanna kind of put that into. So that's why I don't think this is gonna go away, especially something something like that, so something so easy to execute on, in my opinion.
I don't see how the Pirates win this. I think there's definitely a chance that the person who pulls the card wins big, but to me, Topps is the biggest winner here. I mean, whatever they paid to get this done, if they're paying for the Pirates offer, you know what I mean, as part of this promotion, they're going to win huge. Because and I'm sure they'll spill the numbers, but when we get there, the amount of cards that are about to be bought in the city of Pittsburgh are going to be the most in history, right? Just because this offer exists. B, I would assume, because of what we're talking about here, that there's going to be a hell of a lot of interest from the sharp collectors to start pulling these debut cards, which is going to ramp up interest. And then if this becomes a thing, and maybe, prospect B, I know that Baltimore's got a bunch of prospects that they're spinning through. Who's the top prospect right now, Dan, for 2025? Do you know off the top of your head?
I mean,
it's all right.
It's a little bit
Job.
I mean, I think technically Dylan Cruz is like a lot of people's number one, but yeah, let's just throw that out there.
He's already debuted, but there you go. So let's just say, right, that these become a thing, and why wouldn't Team 2 start doing this? Or maybe this is an annual thing where the rookie of the year, you know what I mean? Because I think that's where Skenes is headed. If he's edges out Jackson Merrill here, that's actually tonight, by the way. For those keeping track of the unbelievably silent MLB awards this season, maybe that's what it is. Maybe like the rookie of the year debut card becomes this promotional offer that Topps just pays for every single offseason, and it becomes a thing. It's brilliant by Topps. No matter how this shakes out, it's brilliant by Topps. They're the winners of this. It's cool that baseball's involved in something like this, and we'll have to see how it shakes off.
And just let's walk through here. This sets up for. I wanted to say this sets up for scandal, but and I'll walk through what happens a lot of the card market now for people who don't know is there's something called breaking, which is basically where somebody buys like one person buys a bunch of cards and other people buy into those. It's called, and they break open a pack. So in theory, Mike could say buy into one of these breaks and he could want the team, the Pittsburgh Pirates, if they open that case and the Skenes card is in there, Mike gets that card. Now, there in the past,
the buy-in for the Pirates though is going to be insane, right?
Well, yes, exactly, and I joke that this sets up for scandal. I mean, there's always some shady breaker that it has the opportunity to break this. But I guess my overall point is there is at least some chance this ends up in the hands of somebody from Pittsburgh, even if it is opened, across the country, if you will, because a lot of times you're buying in to your own personal team, the team you're a fan of. In this instance, obviously people are going to want the Pirates just to get that Skenes card. But cool. I think you get my point. So
it's cool. It's definitely unique. It's good to break up the conversation of the offseason a little bit here. And we will certainly see where we go. All right, man. Good stuff.
Thanks, Mike.